Alright, I'm back with another marathon video. This one has just turned into a 2-for-1 because right as I was about to record this, some news broke, not about marathon specifically, but it affects marathon. Today is not going to be about player count trends or my take. The two things here are the news about a release date change, not for marathon, but one of its, let's say, competitors, and then a breakdown of a recent Discord call where a lot of the Joe Ziegler and Lars Beck and all of these people answered a lot of community and creator questions inside that server. I'm now in that server. I got a link, so maybe I'll be around for the next one. First of all, Borderlands 4, as announced by Randy Pitchford in a video that he just deleted because, I don't know, he broke his own embargo or something. I don't know. But the announcement is that Borderlands 4 is moving its release date to September 12th, which is before almost 2 weeks-ish before its old release date of September 23rd, which is obviously Marathon's release date. And this has been kind of a consistent conversation about, is it a good idea for Marathon to launch on the same day as Borderlands 4? Now, it's not. I have thought that the idea that there would be no overlap between Marathon and Borderlands 4 is stupid. I don't know how you can say that. I know that they're totally different genres, and yet this is a Bungie game. A lot of Destiny people are going to be playing Marathon or trying Marathon. I would say a lot of the people who are very positive about Marathon, maybe not all of them, certainly, but a good chunk are, Bungie fans that are Destiny players that I think the most I've seen is like the higher end PvP guys like it a lot, but like there's going to be overlap between people who are wanting to try Marathon or buy it and Borderlands 4. Now, that is not a factor. I think this is very good news for Marathon. 2-ish weeks is certainly enough to play a good amount of Borderlands 4 for people who are going to play that in the first place. Now there's no immediate decision about which one to play. I was going to play Marathon first at launch to see how it is because Bungie stuff is my priority, generally speaking, but I'm a huge Borderlands fan. So now I'm excited that at least I'll get a good chunk of time in there. So Marathon, I've heard that Marathon chose that date in the first place because there were kind of industry rumblings that Borderlands was probably eventually going to move its date. And that happened. I don't want to report that before that because I did not know for sure if that would happen, but here we are. And it's interesting because the Pitchford tweet, at least the first one, I haven't seen the new one at this point, said that we have to move our release date, which is not something you would usually say if you're moving your release date forward. So the obvious question there is what's going to go on with GTA 6. I still think Marathon at the 23rd is safe from GTA 6. I don't imagine GTA 6 is going to drop any earlier than mid-October. That would be 3 weeks away. It could be later than that, but at some point you got to pick a date. I did my whole thing where I think Marathon should be delayed. I still fundamentally believe that, but that does not seem the most likely to happen. And that will transition into my next topic here, which is the Discord call. Thank you to my friend Destin, who elaborately wrote all of this down in a tweet thread. And so this is me kind of translating his notes and going through each issue. This was a 2-hour call, so we'll see how long this video ends up. It is, definitely a high-level summary of everything, but it covers a pretty wide range of issues, so I'm going to read through all of them. So they are working to accommodate a big influx of alpha players because this was supposed to be an NDA thing, and now it's not, so I think they're willing to let more people in. I know this has been frustrating because all the comments on all these videos are that people don't get codes. They are supposedly doing new code waves every day. So we will see how that works out. But, obviously we are halfway through the alpha now. And if you get a code with 48 hours left, that's not super ideal. So we'll see what happens with that. I wish all of you luck. They said they cannot solve the proximity chat issue for launch. It's not clear. This whole list, some things may make it for launch, some things don't. They're not often super specific, but they have talked about some things that won't make it for launch. One of those things is proximity chat. They were, quote, always looking into it. They say they have concerns about compliance and safety. So one of the reasons they said they don't want proximity chat is because of safety and toxicity and things like that. And everyone is like, this is what, this genre is, and there's certainly room for toxicity on your own team of randoms. So, I personally, I don't care about this, but I know it's a big extraction thing, and it seems like an oversight not to have it at launch. These are all kind of over the place, so they don't necessarily flow into each other. They are changing some of the icons for launch because they think some of the icons look too similar to one another. One example of this, things that aren't done yet, is that the Claymore asset is a placeholder, and there's probably a few of these scattered around. So they're, quote, taking a second pass at the icons. They were asked about what the hook is. I think this is Destin's question. This is the thing that everyone's like, okay, what's the hook? What's the thing that stands out about this? And I think it was Joe Ziegler who said it's runner-based group play. This is an extraction shooter that uses classes, and that is different than others. I have heard that listed sort of frequently as a negative for a lot of people, but this is how Bungie thinks they're standing out in the genre. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. They also think, because of this, that they are a more action-based extraction shooter than others. They talk about how in other extraction shooters, you're hiding in bushes a lot and things like that. So they seem proud that they're more action-oriented. I've said that this feels like a slower version of Apex, and, much slower perhaps. But, I think that's kind of what they were going for based on how, they're pitching this. They do want a lot more action. If you're solo and you're sneaking around doing stealth things, you are hiding in bushes some of the time, but that's obviously not, the main way you play the game. They were asked about PvP and player engagements and all this kind of stuff. So they think that right now there are enough on-map events that pull players together, and they don't want this to be a battle royale where you're just constantly seeking out teams and you're wiping out, 3-4 teams a match in order to win. They do want to make it easier to, quote unquote, find a fight when you're looking for one. I don't know if that's a problem given how spawn rushing is sort of happening already as people learn all the spawns, but they want people to fight over specific things, which are kind of these in-map events. They say that they're averaging one PvP encounter, one team battle per map. That might be more of an extraction thing, but I've heard a lot of people saying they wish there was more PvP and they can go entire games without seeing anyone, which is something Bungie says they don't intend. But, either it's people who who aren't thrilled with getting in PvP if they're getting erased with, lesser gear, or people who are just really looking for more actual player combat, not bots. And I don't know. Bungie thinks it's in a good place, so we'll see if players agree. More generally, they're saying they're trying to be as transparent with communication as possible. So that's what's happening with this kind of thing. I don't remember if I put this in later, but they did announce that there would be more tests before launch. Previously, we only heard about an open beta after this closed alpha, which is supposed to be in August. This may mean another beta. This could mean another alpha, but they did say more tests, plural. So that implies to me there will at least be one more session between May and August over the summer sometime. Hopefully by then it would be open and we're not, scrambling for codes, but there's no word on that yet. People are asking about where are the aliens? How do you pronounce this? Why aren't they in the game yet? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. They're not going to put all of the AI enemies or different races in the game immediately, especially not in the alpha. They may end up putting them in the fourth secret on the ship marathon map. That seems the most likely to me, but it's not a guarantee. That could be something after launch. They say that contracts are in beta. They're adding more of them, and they think that early contracts keep you in perimeter too long because the vast majority of them are telling you to do X, Y, and Z at all these different POIs and perimeter. They think the rewards aren't obvious enough because it's usually just giving you some little box and you don't know what's in the box till you open it. Maybe they address this, but I didn't see anything or hear anything about there being multiple contracts at a time. I don't know that's been a big complaint where you can only pick one contract, either major or minor or priority, to complete at a time. And if you complete one of the objectives for the other contracts you have in waiting, that doesn't count. I really think they need to do more contracts than just one contract, but we'll see if that actually happens. In terms of sponsored kits, they are adding more because they want to encourage different playstyles rather than just giving you a rifle and a pistol and some, med kits or whatever to start with. Very good idea, very necessary, because the current sponsor kit is pretty awful because it gives you maybe the worst weapon in the game besides like the base pistol, this AR that is terrible, terrible damage, even compared to other baseline gray weapons. So, you get an SMG thing, a Magnum thing, a machine gun thing. They'll have to feel better than the current one. And obviously, I think the current rifle needs to be buffed. Certainly not going to be competitive, as competitive with high-end gear, but yes. They were asked about cosmetic microtransactions. Typical line about they want players to, quote-unquote, express themselves through cosmetic microtransactions. This will also include things like emblems and icons, not just skins. In terms of how the skins look, they look at how we're reacting to Joe Cross art, who's like the art director of the game, and how all of those awesome pieces of art he's putting out, whether concept art or renders or whatever, everyone's really all about those. I'm not quite clear on this because all the art he's put out of these characters that I can see is they're the base skins. That wasn't true with the glitch skins that were in the cinematic trailer, so maybe he made those too. But yeah, so we'll see if he releases more art. No prices, it'd be silly to think those skin prices aren't going to be $15 to $20 like every other game. And yes, it's half the price of the game. It happens everywhere. So that's just sort of the state of the industry now. Battle passes, I don't know if that was specifically addressed, but same thing. They've talked about a training mode for the game. Probably won't get here for launch. I think it's kind of like a shooting range practice thing. Like a lot of hero shooters have this, more than just like the tutorial. Kind of experimenting with different builds and, how certain guns hit or gear, things like that, without the risk of, losing them. A common complaint is that people cannot strip mods off weapons without destroying those mods. They said they are looking at a way to switch out mods, but with quote unquote some sort of tax, some sort of friction that it costs, as opposed to just doing it for free whenever you want. I don't know if that's credits or something else, but that appears to be the current plan for that. Again, we're not 100% sure which of these things are coming for launch, beta, or later. They are looking at engagements between 1v1 and 1v2 players, like how those kind of things play out in terms of what it feels like to be shot in those. I'm not quite sure what that means, but they're also doing considerations for different things with different types of gear. The examples they mentioned were, okay, you have a purple shield, you have all this health, but maybe it makes you slower. That's interesting. I'm wondering how purple shield people would feel about that. They talk about how a sniper can knock you out of a sprint or slow you down. Given the current state of snipers, that seems excessive, but I think those are probably going to be balanced. They, in terms of matchmaking, they want to separate lower tier players from more experienced players. This is probably far and away the biggest issue with the alpha right now. The separation has just been so quickly, just even over a matter of days. You have people that are spiraling with the awful black market kits, and you have people that are just totally geared that, there's essentially no chance for the other team to win, minus some crazy antics. They said they want less of that in the game, so they're working on, with matchmaking, making that happen. With more players, obviously, I think that will be easier, but that is fundamentally one of the worst parts of the game. We'll see what it looks like in practice, so hopefully that can be significantly changed. Like they said they don't want players to feel like they have no chance in fights against higher geared players, but obviously, you got to maintain some level of a gap there. Someone was asked about if heat is affected by certain things on the map. An example given is, yes, it actually is. So when it's raining, your heat builds up slower. I think if you're moving through a pond or something, it builds up slower. So that is a consideration. I just don't know if people knew that was happening. That's interesting. I didn't see anything about complaints about heat more generally and its buildup and how it's so punishing, at least at baseline. I imagine that's probably going to be balanced to some extent too. That's something that is not going to be super, super difficult to balance, at least in terms of like how easy it is to make that change. I don't know. We'll see. They do not want a player market in the game. This is a big extraction shooter thing, and it is something that they apparently do not want. It's appears to be something they're not considering. They think that sandbox things will make things less hopeless for lesser geared players, and they don't need a player market to make that happen. And they say that they need to work more on upgrades for the black market, so that can be a more useful source of gear. But in terms of an actual player market, that is not something they're doing. I think there are probably a good number of extraction shooter players, based on what I've heard, that will think that's bad, but we'll see. They addressed visuals. They understand graphics outside do not look good. They understand player models do not look good. They apparently have been meeting, quote, twice a week just about character models alone. Some of these are truly awful. Locusts, like, look at any locusts in the menu, in the game. None of these look especially good right now. So that's definitely something to work on. Changing, they're talking about lighting and materials and glass and things like that. So obviously there are a lot more visual changes to come. This is the common complaint of interiors look good, but the exteriors look great. This is always something that is going to be polished for launch. It's just a matter of how transformative it's going to be in time. And, it is something they can work on past launch too, but I certainly hope it's a marked improvement for launch. The build that we're playing is 1 to 2 months behind current development. I had people telling me it was 6 months behind, and this is a 6-month-old build. No idea where they got that information, but it was wrong, and I did not imagine that was true. So 2 months behind, that's something. They've made some changes till then. There are, there's 5 months till launch, 6 months if we're considering, 6-7 months if we're considering the age of the build. They've said that they can do a lot of iteration there. Iteration is not necessarily like major feature additions, but it's kind of a lot of stuff they're saying here with the polishing and with the balance and, these little additions. So that is going to be the stuff that's worked on. And they're saying that, like, it's the old Destiny thing, where, like, the things you think might take forever can be easy, or the things you think are super easy might take forever. It depends. And, like, this is, this isn't exclusive to Marathon. This is any game. We're going to see balance patches and polishing and all this stuff, like, indefinitely. So it's how it works. I maintain that they need more structural changes fundamentally, that it would take longer, hence my push for a delay. But, that's my take. They were asked about suppressors. They are considering that, but they need to figure out how that would work and be balanced. They agree that footsteps are too quiet right now, but they also want a difference between, like, running on metal and running on grass and, like, these different surfaces. So it's not kind of like a uniform sound. So that's something they're working on. People are talking about how annoying it is to try and just go for, like, one certain material if you can't find it, or if you just keep getting, destroyed trying to get it. They said they're talking about materials conversions, so that might lessen some of that pain. It's unclear exactly what that means. I don't think it's just buying materials with credits. It's, you farm enough of this thing and 5 of this thing becomes that thing, that kind of thing. So they were asked about if choosing a faction will be more important than it is now, as it's just sort of a different set of contracts and it's not anything really past that. They talked about stuff down the line in year 1. This game is not getting shut off after 2 weeks, despite whatever issues it may have. Whenever it launches, it is not going to be Concord. It may not succeed in the long term, but I am pretty sure they're going to get a year of content. No guarantees, but we'll see. They talk about stuff down the line in year 1 being perhaps more involved with contracts and maybe more conflict between them, and making that a little, more relevant, but not really many specifics on those. They've been taking in lots of feedback on solo play. They said that they're not ruling out solos or saying that they'll never do solos, but that's obviously not something that's coming for launch or the indefinite future. With solo play right now, they're looking at things like, okay, your teammates die and then you're just solo from there. Like, what are things they could do to balance that more? Or if you're loading in solo to, just on the map by yourself because there's no fill, like what they could do to make that better. I've seen in other games, they give you like at least one self-revive kit, something like that. I doubt they're going to make you like super overpowered and in trying to make you win 1v3s and stuff, but they're working on it to some extent. There will be more servers in just the US. That is what's currently happening, but obviously that is not the long-term plan. They said that we are going to see more of the any of the third and fourth map before launch. There was, third map, I think that was pretty obvious. The fourth map is this like secret map on Marathon. The way it's supposed to be, announced, or it's supposed to be unlocked. It's supposed to be like a Dreaming City-ish sort of thing. At this point, that's not exactly a secret. Bungie, this wasn't guaranteed. They may have just wanted to make this kind of entirely a secret and not really show us anything. If they're still going to do the unlock thing, they probably won't tell us how to do that. I've heard various things about the state of that map and how finished it is. It may be, launching close to release, or, maybe it's pushed. It depends. My questions are, how quote endgame is it? Like, what percent of players are even really going to be able to compete there? Is it only the top, purple gold tier players who get there? Because like you kind of level through these maps and stages, like Perimeter's Dire Marsh, maybe Dire Marsh is easier in the next one. And then, so how many people will kind of be able to climb up that ladder? I'm curious about that. They talk about, the last thing here is they talk about story a little bit. They acknowledge that they're not focused on a traditional story. Obviously, they say that you're a detective and Tau Ceti is the crime scene. So they just reference things that are kind of in the game already, like factions talking to you. There's some messages at the beginning of matches you may want to listen to. There are very rarely these kind of interrupted broadcast messages that are like creepy messages. I think in like 15, 20 hours, I've gotten one of those, and I'm not sure how many there are in the alpha. So we'll see there. Maybe there's other hidden things or whatever, but it's a live service extraction shooter. It's not going to be the most focused on story in terms of priorities. So that is the list. There are probably certainly some things I missed in there. It seems like they are going to do more of these in time. I'm probably the most curious about what they said about other tests, whether that will be another closed test, whether that will be a sooner open test than the beta. If you have an open beta, really any open test, like that's sort of like the moment if you just get everybody in there and, mass public opinion starts to form about the game like that. So, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. Judging by the closed alpha reaction, it's people playing, it is, people watching and consuming it that way, but we'll see. But it does seem like we'll get at least one more test over the summer, if not more than that. I would say probably one, but so safer release date, I would say, and then all these different issues. Let me know what you think about any of these. I'm curious which of these stand out to you, which of these are the most important ones that you're really trying to hope that they change. So we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.